Helga.
Auf der Heide blüht ein kleines Blümelein. Und das heißt...
Huntress is a 2024 low-budget action horror movie that pits a premise like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Wrong Turn in World War II. So the year is 1945 and the Allies are pressing in on Berlin. And the story focuses on a kind of medical team. We have a colonel that has been injured and being transported by a jeep. With him are two nurses, a kind of driver who was also a paramedic, and a kind of sergeant who's like their security. They end up getting lost in the kind of the woods and come across this German girl who says that she can offer them some fuel because they're running low. Inevitably, they go back to the house, which is a large house, and it is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre situation. You can probably read into the rest. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what worked with this premise. I've got to say, a World War II kind of backwards slasher movie is certainly an interesting one. And the idea here is that the war has caused this family to run out of resources, which has pushed them into kind of cannibalism. So there is that reason for it. And obviously they are German and our protagonists are the Allies. So you have that kind of motivation as well. They seem, in particular, motivated to maybe attack certain nationalities. The idea of the actual Huntress is that one of the family member is this young woman who kind of lures people in, but she's become like an expert hunter. We also have like a kind of Leatherface style character as well. So yeah, I mean, I think the idea is actually kind of relatively solid and has an interesting spin on this kind of backwards slasher, wrong turn style movie that we've seen, a few times before now, and I think it's a little bit original at the very least. And this is a low budget movie, and I got to say, there are some historical inaccuracies and obviously things that don't look maybe completely authentic, but I think they do a good enough job for a movie of this kind of budget to kind of at least be acceptable if you are willing to kind of obviously, accept the fact this is a lower budget movie. Like, for example, we have like one of the nurses is kind of like wearing lipstick and things like that, and it's in the combat zone, so there's a few kind of inaccuracies, but I think it's pretty much the Jeep and things like that, and it's all kind of like, I think, just about good enough if you are not too much of a stickler for historical accuracy. I mean, if this is a larger budget movie, you may want to, you may have to kind of like require a slightly higher standard, but it is a low budget. I didn't think the acting was all that bad, if I'm honest. I mean, I think the acting here, I mean, again, this is people trying to kind of put on German characters and things, but I didn't think the acting was kind of too bad, I could just say. I mean, I'm not saying this is Oscar-worthy by any means, but I was kind of like, okay, I believe the characters enough for this movie, and we're kind of going on and stuff. I think the actual location is obviously just in the woods, but it serves its purpose. And then we kind of get into this kind of large house, and there's some okay kind of set decoration to show obviously the more macabre kind of side of stuff here, which kind of makes it sort of kind of quite fun. So it's somewhat kind of watchable in that regards. Okay, so let's talk about what doesn't work in this movie, and let's just kind of go back on some of the things I've said. I mean, obviously, if you are a real stickler, the lack of historical accuracy might annoy you. I think I can accept it, but it might be the case for some. So one of the problems I have with this movie is there's not actually a lot of dialogue in it, particularly kind of once the story starts in earnest. And as such, you don't feel massively connected to the characters because we really don't have much to go on, really, to kind of know them. The movie also sort of sets up a few elements here that you think are going to come into play later on, but don't. For example, we have one of the nurses is stealing morphine and appears to be addicted to morphine. Does that go anywhere? Does that play into the story? No. We have another character steals a ring of a shrine, which we are led to believe is probably a relative of this family, and she steals this ring, which has obviously been put on the shrine, and it's kind of, does it form a part of the story? No, it doesn't. I mean, it's kind of like the kind of the bad guys notice it, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't kind of form part of the actual story. So there are things that are introduced. That's just a couple of examples that you think, okay, how's that going to play out? Okay, it doesn't really. The story would have been unaffected either way, is what I'm kind of saying here. So you feel the story doesn't really know what to do and introduces just some things to have stuff sort of going on, but it doesn't actually matter in regards to the story. I also have to say as well, I think our group of allied soldiers acts like, I mean, they're written to be somewhat ineffectual. Let me just kind of say that. I mean, like I said, I think the acting is okay, but I think the characters are written to be, somewhat idiotic, if we're being completely honest, at certain points in this movie, and don't really sort of seem the logical choices would be. I mean, they seem very easy to kind of fall into this trap, for example. The ending, without saying what the ending is, there's an element that happens to the ending that has this. At the last kind of minute, it introduces another aspect to it. And I was like, what is going on? That it just sort of comes out of nowhere and doesn't really kind of make any sense. And it's sort of, okay. Almost like a supernatural element is kind of what I was saying. It doesn't really it doesn't come out of anywhere. It's stupid ending. The Huntress, which is obviously what the movie is named of, is one of the characters. And it makes it seem like she's going to be like this real threat outside of a bit of a honey trap. I didn't really think she was demonstrating a particularly strong hunting persona, if that makes sense. So again, it's one of these things where I'm thinking, it's one of these things that are sort of set up and then it's not really paying off. So overall, the movie, I think, has a good idea, and there are some aspects which I think make it watchable, but at the same time it just feels like it's not, the idea hasn't been thought through or expanded upon or really made to be a better movie, which the premise could have lent into. As it stands at the moment, it's somewhat of a flawed movie, even if you kind of factor in the low budget that it clearly is. So as such, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. There is some enjoyment to be had here, if you can accept some low-budget shenanigans. But it's just a little bit silly at the end of the day. 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.